Darnell Okafor was 42 years old, a construction project manager who had spent the better part of 2 decades building other people's visions and making sure they came in on time. He kept a worn leather notebook in his left breast pocket. Not a phone, a notebook, and wrote everything down in it with a ballpoint pen he carried clipped beside it. Schedules, material costs, change orders, names, and what those names had agreed to. He had learned early in his career that the job site was full of people who said one thing to your face and remembered something different later. The notebook was his answer to that. He had been married to Simone for 6 years. He had loved her genuinely and completely in the way that a man who keeps good records loves, with precision, with evidence, with a full accounting of what he had given and what he had received. The morning that changed everything began before sunrise, in the kitchen of their home on Carver Drive, when Darnell heard his mother-in-law's voice coming through the wall of the guest room. What happened next would cost 2 women everything they had planned. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The coffee had been dripping for 4 minutes when Darnell heard it. That was a Thursday in late October. The house was still dark except for the kitchen light, and the guest room was directly on the other side of the kitchen wall, a fact of the floor plan he had never had reason to think about until that morning. Darnell had been a project manager for 19 years. The first thing you learn in construction management is that conversations you were not supposed to hear are almost always more important than the ones you were. He stood at the counter. He did not move. He listened. His mother-in-law, Gloria Mensa, had arrived 2 days before for what Simone had described as a routine visit. She did this twice a year, flew in from Atlanta, stayed in the guest room, cooked things Simone had grown up with, took walks in the neighborhood with her daughter, and left. Darnell had always been cordial with her. He had always sensed that cordial was the most he was going to get. What he heard through the kitchen wall on that Thursday morning was Gloria's voice, low and quick, with the cadence of someone working through a list. "The account is the first thing," Gloria said. "Before anything else is filed, before she tells him anything, the account needs to be moved. All of it. Once papers are served, it gets complicated." A pause. Simone's voice, quieter. He couldn't make out the words. "I talked to the attorney last week," Gloria said. "He said 30 days is enough. Long enough to establish separation of use, as long as nothing is moved after the filing." Another pause. "The car is in both names," Gloria said. "We'll deal with that. The house is the priority." Darnell stood very still. The coffee finished dripping. He did not reach for his cup. He had a small digital recorder in the drawer beside the refrigerator. He used it on job sites when a foreman or a vendor said something about a timeline and then denied it later. He had owned it for 4 years. He had never had a reason to use it outside of work. He opened the drawer. He pressed record. He set it on the counter near the wall, angled toward the guest room. He poured his coffee. He went and sat in the living room with a notebook open on his knee and wrote nothing in it for a long time. He had filed that morning away by the time Simone came downstairs at 7. He did not act differently. He said good morning. He made eggs. He would mark that Thursday as the last morning he saw his marriage the way he had believed it to be. Darnell had come up in this work the slow way. Apprentice carpenter at 23, foreman at 29, assistant project manager at 34, full PM at 37, after the kind of track record that speaks for itself without anyone needing to say so. He drove a 10-year-old Ram pickup that smelled like sawdust and had a company logo on the door. He wore steel-toed boots that he resold rather than replaced because a well-made boot, broken incorrectly, was worth more than a new one. He carried his lunch 4 days out of 5. He had put $28,000 into the renovation of the house on Carver Drive over the course of 3 summers, weekends, evenings, the measured application of skills he had accumulated across 2 decades. The kitchen remodel. The second bathroom. The rear deck he had framed and finished himself, one board at a time, during the August stretch of 2 consecutive years. He had not hired out the work. He had not complained about the time. Simone had run her own event coordination business from the house's converted study. He had built out that room himself, the custom shelving, the dedicated electrical circuits for her equipment, the double-pane window he had sourced and installed because she worked better in natural light. He had taken 3 vacation days to do it so she wouldn't lose a week of workspace. There was a period, early in their marriage, when he thought they wanted the same things. He had believed this based on evidence, the conversations they had in the first years, the way she talked about the future, the specificity of the plans they made together. He was a man who believed in evidence. He had noticed, in the prior 18 months, that the conversations had changed shape, not dramatically. Gradually, the way a load-bearing wall develops a crack, so slowly that by the time it's visible, the movement has been happening for years. She was less present at dinner. She took more calls in the other room. She had started, in small ways, organizing parts of her life in compartments he was not offered access to. He had told himself it was the business pressure. He had extended that interpretation longer than the evidence warranted. Their neighbor Earl, a retired electrician who had helped Darnell run the new service panel the prior spring, had said to him once over a beer on that back deck, "You know what I see in you? The same thing I saw in myself at your age. A man who pours everything into people who've stopped pouring back and doesn't say a word about it, because saying a word about it isn't who he is." Darnell had taken a long drink from his bottle and said nothing. He had thought about that comment more than once since. That was what Gloria had never understood about what she was dealing with, until the morning she said it all out loud into a wall he was standing on the other side of. His brother-in-law's name was Winston. Not Simone's brother, her cousin, 20 years removed, who had grown up in the same Atlanta household as Gloria and treated her more like a mother than an aunt. Winston was 51, a retired postal worker, straight-backed and deliberate. The kind of man who understood paperwork the way some people understood music. He had kept records of his own life with the same instinct Darnell had developed in the field. Winston had been watching things from a distance for longer than Darnell knew. He had not said anything because, as he explained when he finally did, he had been waiting for Darnell to be in a position where the information would be useful rather than simply painful. He called on a Friday evening, 9 days after the Thursday recording. Darnell was sitting in his truck in the parking lot of a grocery store, not yet ready to go inside, not sure why. His phone rang, and it was Winston's name on the screen. "I need to tell you some things," Winston said. "Some of them I think you already know. Some of them you don't. I'd rather do this in person, but if you want to hear it now, I can do that." "Now," Darnell said. Winston had been present at a conversation in Atlanta 7 months ago, during a family gathering Darnell had not attended because of a project deadline. He had been in the back room when Gloria and Simone were in the kitchen. He had heard Gloria use the phrase "the exit strategy." He had heard her describe what she called the window, a specific stretch of time in which she believed a divorce filing would maximize Simone's position relative to the house equity, Simone's business, and a financial account the details of which Winston did not fully understand, but had written down what he could. She used that phrase, Winston said. The window, Like it was a business plan. Darnell sat in the parking lot. How long has this been going on? The specific planning, Winston said, at least 7 months that I can confirm. How long she's been thinking about it, I don't know. Darnell was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the guest room wall. He thought about the recorder, which he had retrieved that same Thursday morning before Simone came downstairs, and which was now in his work bag in a zippered compartment. There's something else, Winston said. He paused, choosing the order of what came next. She's been in contact with an attorney in your county. Not to file. At least not yet. But she's consulted. Gloria set up the cons. She paid for it. What's the attorney's name? Winston told him. Darnell wrote it in his notebook. There's one more thing, Winston said. His voice was even, careful, the voice of a man who has thought through the weight of every word before speaking it. The account she mentioned in October, I don't know the specifics. But I know she said before anything is filed. That tells me the timing matters to them. Which tells me the money is somewhere it shouldn't be, or will be. Darnell closed his notebook. He had written 3 pages of notes without being aware of doing it. What do you want to do? Winston said. I want to do it correctly, Darnell said. That means I need a few weeks. He ended the call. He sat in the parking lot for another 6 minutes. Then he went inside and bought groceries. He came home. He cooked dinner. He sat across from Simone and talked about her week. He listened carefully to everything she said and did not say. He could see the shape of it now. Every line, every connection, every sequence, running from one piece to the next. He had read enough blueprints in his life to know. When you understood the full structure, you didn't move until you were certain where the weight was bearing. He didn't move fast. That was the part they had not planned for. He understood the sequencing. On a complex job site, you don't pull wire before the conduit is run. You don't pour concrete before the forms are set and inspected. You don't let the other side see the walls until the foundation cannot be moved. Gloria had been working with the urgency of someone who believed she was ahead of the schedule. She was ahead of the schedule she knew about. She had no idea there was another one. His attorney was a man named Calvin Reese, a former county prosecutor who had spent the last 12 years in family and civil law, recommended by a colleague at the firm that handled Darnell's company's contracts. Calvin called back within 2 hours of Darnell's message, on a Monday morning at 7:08. I'll need the recording, Calvin said, after Darnell had walked him through everything. And I'll need the notebook. I'll need every entry you made and when you made it. You'll have them, Darnell said. Don't change anything in your accounts yet, Calvin said. Not $1 moved. If they've already moved something, I need to see where it was before they touched it. Do you know what's in the joint account? As of last Tuesday, Darnell said $41,200. He had written it down. He wrote down account balances the way he wrote down everything, precisely, with dates. Check it today, Calvin said. Don't react to what you find. Just tell me. He checked it that afternoon. The balance was $9,800. He did not react. He called Calvin. He reported the number in the same tone he used to report a subcontractor's material costs. Calvin said, Good. That's what I needed to know. He paused. She moved it fast. That tells us something about her confidence level. She thinks she's already past the part where you could stop her. Darnell understood that kind of confidence. He had seen it on job sites. The foreman who assumes the inspection has already passed, who closes the wall before the inspector arrives. It was the most expensive mistake in the business. Calvin engaged a forensic accountant named Sandra Price, who had worked bank fraud cases for 16 years before going private. Sandra went through the prior 11 months of transactions across the joint account, Simone's business account, and 3 credit accounts Darnell had not known existed. What she found was methodical and layered. $31,400 transferred from the joint account to a personal savings account in Simone's name alone, executed in 4 movements between August and October. The business account had been used to make payments to a vendor that Sandra could not verify existed. The credit accounts, opened in Simone's name over the prior 14 months, carried a combined balance of $22,700 in purchases that had no visible connection to the event coordination business. "This isn't disorganized," Sandra said, during the call when she delivered her findings. "This was planned. Someone who understood financial separation guided this." She paused. Whoever advised on this had done it before. Darnell thought about the word attorney. He thought about the 7-month timeline Winston had placed in Atlanta. Calvin filed a financial fraud action in the 3rd week of November, quietly, without notice to the other party. He simultaneously filed for a court hold on the joint accounts and the property at Carver Drive. Simone received the papers on a Wednesday afternoon. Darnell was on a job site in the next county when his phone showed a missed call from her at 2:47. Then a second at 2:51. Then nothing. An hour later, Gloria called. He let it go to voicemail. Her message was 3 minutes and 12 seconds long. It began softly. She said she was worried, that things had gotten complicated, that she hoped he and Simone could find a way to talk. By the 90-second mark, the softness had tightened. She said she had always thought he was someone who could handle disagreement with grace. She said she hoped he wasn't letting other people put ideas in his head. She said Simone needed to focus on her business right now and didn't need this level of disruption. Darnell listened to the voicemail twice. He did not listen to it because it upset him. He listened to it because he wanted to note the precise progression, where the warmth ended, where the pressure began, how long the transition took. He wrote it down. She called. He told Calvin the next morning. "I know," Calvin said. "Her attorney called mine. They want to discuss settlement. A beat. They think this is still about the marriage." "It's not," Darnell said. "No," Calvin said. "It's not." Gloria thought it was already over. That was exactly where Darnell needed her to be. Darnell arrived 35 minutes early to the conference room on the 9th floor of the Reese Legal Group building. He liked it that way. On any job site, the PM who arrived after everyone else was already at a disadvantage. The room had already been arranged by someone else's logic. The room was long, low-lit, with a narrow window along one wall that showed a gray November sky. Neutral colors. A rectangular table with 8 chairs. Nothing on the walls. The kind of room designed to remove all context except what was placed on the table. Calvin arrived at 9:20 with Sandra Price, who carried a bound report and set it in front of her chair without opening it. They arranged their materials with the quiet efficiency of people who had done this many times. The room was still. They came in at 9:32. Simone and Gloria together with their attorney, a man named Gerald Fitch, tan suit, a folder held under one arm, following just behind. That was the first signal. Gloria should not have been in the room. She was not a party to the divorce proceedings. She was not named on any account. She had no legal standing at that table. She sat down anyway. Her posture was composed. She surveyed the room with the calm expression of a woman who believed the outcome was already determined. Gerald Fitch glanced at Calvin. Calvin said nothing. He let them settle. "Thank you for making time," Fitch said. "We're here to discuss terms." My clients believe there's a mutually agreeable path forward, and we'd like to, before terms, Calvin said. There are several matters requiring acknowledgement by all parties present. He opened his folder. The first concerns the joint account held by Darnell and Simone Okafor. As of August 3rd of this year, that account held $41,200. He placed a bank statement on the table. As of November 1st, it held $9,800. We have the forensic trace of 4 transfers, executed August 14th, September 2nd, September 28th, and October 19th, each moving funds to a personal account held solely by Simone Okafor. He let the document sit there. A civil fraud action was filed on November 18th. Calvin continued. The court hold on both the joint accounts and the property at 1140 Carver Drive is now in effect. Gloria's expression had not changed. She was working to keep it from changing, and that effort was visible to anyone watching closely enough. Darnell was watching closely enough. Fitch said, carefully, we'd like to address those transactions in the context of. Sandra placed the bound report on the table. The second matter, Calvin said, concerns the recording. The room went very still. On October 23rd of this year, a conversation took place in the guest room of the marital home at 1140 Carver Drive. The recording, lawfully made on the premises by a resident of that home, documents a planning conversation regarding asset movement, divorce filing timing, and legal strategy. Calvin slid a transcript across the table. The participants in that conversation are identified by voice. One of them is seated in this room. He looked at Gloria for the first time. Not long, just long enough. Gloria looked at Fitch. For the first time since entering the room, her composure had a seam in it. Something moved across her face. Not fear exactly, but the specific expression of a person watching the foundation beneath a structure they built reveal itself as something they did not design. Fitch was reading the transcript. He had stopped looking at his clients. His pen was still. We want to be clear, Calvin said, about what we are and are not saying. We are not making criminal allegations at this table. What we are doing is disclosing that this recording exists, has been authenticated, and has been submitted as evidence in the civil fraud matter. Its relevance to the division of marital assets and to the question of which party bears responsibility for the costs of these proceedings is total. The silence lasted 8 seconds. Darnell counted them. We'll allow time for counsel to confer, Calvin said. Darnell stood. He had brought only his notebook, and it had served its purpose. He did not gather anything from the table. He buttoned his jacket. He shook Sandra's hand. He shook Calvin's hand. He walked toward the door. He stopped once. He turned. He looked at Gloria directly. He said it quietly, only for the two of them without raising his voice. Not his performance. Because it was the only thing left to say that was true. You taught her that a man who doesn't argue doesn't notice, he said. I noticed everything. He walked out without looking back. It did not happen all at once. The civil fraud judgment came through in February. The $31,400 in transferred funds was ordered returned to the joint estate before division. The credit account balances, $22,700 in undisclosed debt, were assigned to Simone's side of the ledger. The house on Carver Drive was appraised, and the equity divided. But with the court-documented improvements, 19 years of Darnell's receipts and labor records, notebook page after notebook page, factored in as direct contribution. Darnell walked away with the house. Simone's event coordination business, built in a room he had wired and windowed with his own hands, had to relocate. Without the Carver Drive address, without the infrastructure he had built around it, the overhead doubled in the first quarter. By spring, she had 2 employees instead of 5. Gloria returned to Atlanta in December. The family events she had organized and presided over for years, the reunions, the holiday gatherings, the Sunday dinners, began to happen without her at the center of them. People didn't announce a shift. They just started choosing differently. She was carrying what she had chosen, the way a person carries something they cannot set down. Not with drama, just with the daily, accumulated weight of it. Darnell was building something. Not fast. The way he built everything. He had been offered a senior operations role at a regional development firm 2 years before, and had turned it down because the timing hadn't been right. He called them back in January. The timing was right. His name was on the contracts now. He had 6 people under his direct management, and a project pipeline that ran 18 months out. He still drove the Ram. He still carried the notebook. Winston came up from Atlanta for the 4th of July. They sat on the back deck that Darnell had built across 2 August stretches, and Winston said nothing about any of it for most of the evening. Near the end of the night, he said, "You know what your grandfather used to say? The man who keeps good records is the man who never loses a dispute." Darnell looked out at the yard. "I know," he said. "He told me that too." He wrote it down when Winston left. On a cold February evening, almost 16 months after that October morning, Darnell stood on the back deck of the house on Carver Drive with his hands in his jacket pockets and a cup of coffee he had let go cool. The yard was quiet. The neighborhood had settled into night, a dog somewhere, a car turning in 2 blocks over, the distant low hum of the city doing what cities do after dark. He looked at the boards under his feet. He had laid every one of them himself, measured and cut and fastened with the kind of attention you give to work you intend to stand on for a long time. He went inside. He set his cup in the sink. He took the notebook from his breast pocket and laid it on the kitchen counter and looked at it for a moment. Then he turned out the light and went to bed. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.